call anything to order. Mr. Carson, if you would like to do a blessing,
Sure.
an invocation, we will do that. We'll follow with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Principal.
Okay, let's go ahead and stand, please. Lord God, thank you for bringing us here tonight on a kind of an ugly night, and thank you for safety and travel. Pray that this would be a good meeting and be informative to those who are here. Lord, we want to be about doing good things for the city of Beaver Falls, and so I pray that this meeting would be a part of helping the citizens of this city to flourish. I ask all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. Mr. Carson. Oh, here we go. Take it away, buddy.
First, I want to thank everybody for coming out
Yep.
this evening. My name is Kevin Kunzman, for those who do not know me. I'm a member of council, city council. First of the year, I was the accounts and finance director. Doug Carson, public safety, Mayor Quay, and our illustrious city clerk there, Paul George. But I want to thank you folks for coming out. Now, on a serious note, what I'm going to talk about is, in my opinion, so throughout this series I'm going to give, if it's my opinion, I will say this is my opinion, and I'll give you facts. In my opinion, this is the most serious, critical, important decision that the voters of Beaver Falls are going to make come April 28th of this year. And it's for third-class city code, or third-class city code to possible home rule charter. And I apologize, I had everything laid out in an order, but I think we need to skip a couple things here. What's important is dispel some myths and misinformation that is going around out there. Beaver Falls did not enact home rule charter, okay? All the council did was pass an ordinance requesting that the Board of Elections put on the ballot in April the 28th the following question, okay? So the question is, shall the Government Study Commission of 7 members be elected to study the existing form of government of the municipality to consider the advisability of the adoption of home rule charter and advised to draft recommend home rule charter? So what that does is moves one step. It goes to the voters, and I'll go over the whole series of how home rule charter gets adopted if the citizens of Beaver Falls wishes to, and the whole process going through that, okay? But it's important to note, we did not enact home rule charter. We only moved forward with that. So you ask, why did we do that? So back, a year and a half ago, I was on council 2 years. I'm, a junior guy coming in, gung-ho, looking over stuff, and then I started looking at numbers, and I was like, okay, we have a long-term problem here. We have a short-term problem, long-term problem. So I started researching, of course, on the internet. The internet has a bunch of information. Most of my facts came from the internet. So I started looking as to ways that the city can raise revenues, but not necessarily taxes, okay? So the term home rule charter kept popping up. So I just ignored it because why? Fear of the unknown. I didn't know anything about it, so I just kept moving forward with the other things. The things that I discovered are larger towns, larger cities use, for instance, advertisement on public transit, park benches, stuff like that, which would not generate us enough revenue to fill the gap there. So we had an informal talk with council, maybe 8-9 months ago. And again, as I looked more into this, home rule charter became a tool to help cities move forward, to progress, and to basically fill the gap of the deficit that we're faced with, okay? So again, council, it's the fear of the unknown, and I wasn't, I'm just saying, this is an option here. So back several months ago, we were lucky enough to receive a $70,000 grant from Pennsylvania. and it was to study an early intervention group comes into Beaver Falls. They look at our whole proceeding of our town, from the mayor's office, and as I say, down to the grass in the parks. It's a very thorough thing. Now, we had to match 10%, which is $7,000, so the total thing. So the initial draft was released to us, and she still has to finalize some things. But early on, when she started this, the main thing that this consultant group is saying is, we need to look into home rule charter. Because projections, I'll show you projections here, it's looking kind of dismal for Beaver Falls if we stay with third class city code. So there's two ways that this could have been placed on the ballot. The first one is an ordinance passed by the city of Beaver Falls, which ordinance 4005 was the ordinance that came in front of council, and we passed that. And again, all that does is puts the question on the ballot of the possibility of studying home rule charter. Also, the citizens could have moved forward with this, and like I said, if council didn't pass this, then a correlation of members from the community would have came through, and it's a formula you got to figure out, which what it boils down to is 125 signatures on a ballot. Could have took that to the Board of Elections and certified and got this question on the ballot. It goes after goes in the whole thing of a percentage of the gubernatorial last race, which 2,500 people voted approximately. So that would be the 125. So council decided to take the proactive stance on this. We know that we have to look into this, so that's why we enacted this ordinance to move forward with this. But like I said, citizens could have came forward and done the same thing. So the organization of government, there's three basic types in Pennsylvania: charters, home rule charters, and optional plans. We are under a charter, which is also under third class city code. So if anybody has ever had the fun of reading third class city code, this is what we go by and have to follow. So it was enacted in like the 50s, it's been updated. The last time this was updated was 2015. But this is mandated by the state. So Harrisburg is making laws and saying, Beaver Falls, you have to follow these laws. Anytime that you want to change third class city code, you go to your representative, you go to your senator to try to get third class city code. Things that work out in Harrisburg don't necessarily work in Beaver Falls, okay? So that's one of the things with third class city code that we have. There's over 100 counties, municipalities that are under third class city code. These are examples of third class cities that have went with home rule charter. The report, there's 53 third class cities in the state of Pennsylvania. Only 18 of them have remained with third class city code. So that kind of tells you that they've looked at it and what the advantages and disadvantages were. So home rule charter, what is it? Okay, what it boils down to is it transfers the authority from the state to local government. It gives local government the ability to pass local laws for local needs. It gives government the flexibility of setting taxes. Now, I see everybody, as you say the word taxes, and believe me, I don't like to pay taxes and I don't want to increase taxes. However, I'll explain what the possibilities we have with home rule charter that will be beneficial to the city of Beaver Falls. Home rule charter, what it's going to accomplish for the city is freedom for self-governing. The citizens actually, if this goes through, and I'll explain all the steps, the citizens through the whole process get their input into writing this charter. Okay, so this is a time when the citizens come forward and say, hey, this is what our city has done for me. This is where I think we can improve. So it's all on the citizen base. And the biggest one, avoiding Act 47, which I'll show the bleak numbers here in a minute. Removing overlapping positions. It allows consolidation in some departments, which is a savings. So this is one of the things that we're looking at for our projections. Black was revenues, orange expenditures. as you can see, as we move out here, our revenues are flat. Expenditures go up, okay? And that's even with the strictest budget. So I'd like to point out 2019, as I became a little bit more active, that we've initiated programs that, even though it doesn't look like it, we will actually have a little bit of surplus. But years past, it wasn't, and it keeps putting the debt further and further ahead. However, with flat revenues, increasing costs, there's no way that we can survive. I mean, there's just no way. And this is the numbers, if anyone wants to see those later, but that's the actual numbers. Again, it's just expenditures way over revenues. And when I came here as a business owner, I was told the government can't be ran as a business, and I just didn't understand that. I'm not saying that we have to make this great big profit, but you have to be solvable. You have to be to continue. Okay, so the one advantage to Home Rule Charter is it allows us to move property tax burden from property owners to earned income. So what that would do is it would move, the 0.5%. So to give you some figures, if you're looking at 0.5% increase in your income, so that would be $50 per $10,000 earned. The median income of Beaver Falls is around $35,000 and some odd dollars here. So that would mean an increase of $179 per year in your income tax if it went up to 0.5. Okay, so what that would do would generate more revenue than what we're collecting for property tax. Okay, so the property tax issue, we have several issues, and like I said, I'm not an expert on this, I don't profess, but I hope that you leave here with a basic understanding of this, that you can go research more, talk to friends, whoever, and move forward so that when you go to vote on April 28th, you have an informed, information, decision that you know how to vote. So property tax, like I said, I'm a guy of numbers, okay? So we got our new assessments came from the county there. We have $77 million of assessed value in the city of Beaver Falls. So 22% of those properties are non-taxed, non-profits, so that wipes out that down to $60 million. Okay, so the tax on that is only on the 60 million. Okay, so that's a loss of $500,000 in revenue right there. Okay, so at the 34 mills, should generate $2 million in revenue for the city, but only 85% of the property owners pay their tax on time, delinquent or whatever. Okay, so that tells me that there's that the property tax has put a financial strain on our citizens here. Okay, that they cannot pay these property taxes. So we collect 1.7 million in property taxes when the budget. So that was a difference philosophy that I had, realistic numbers compared to paper budget. So that's kind of helped there. But of that 1.7 that we use for our $7.7 million budget, that amount of money goes into our police department. Okay, so there's three ways that the city generates revenue: taxes, charging for services, or grants, from the state or federal government. Those are the three main things. Okay, so taxes on property right now, we're at 34 mills. Okay, so we can raise another 2 mills, which would take us up to the 36. Then there's a 2.5 wild card that you can throw in for debt reduction. Okay, so a mill of tax only generates the city roughly $47,000. It's going to go up a little bit more, but these calculations, like I said, this was calculations that the treasurer gave to me in the fall. Unfortunately, as you know, that he's passed away, so that leaves a gap with some numbers here. But so $47,000 for every mill that we raise. In order to fill our $500,000 deficit, you're talking of raising taxes 10 mills. And that's just, we can't do it for one thing, and it'll be so much a financial burden on our property owners in the town. Okay, so as we spread out the taxes possibly even lowering the property tax, because a mill doesn't generate, all that much revenue. So there's a possibility, if home rule charter passes, that the commission can put into effect where the property taxes could actually go down a little bit. Earned income tax, yes, would have to go up. It's a point, like I said, 0.5%, which, it's gonna be spread out over your 26 paychecks that you have, so it's not as bad as getting your tax bill, because everybody got their tax bill in the mail. Some people probably opened it up and looked at the tax bill and was like, oh, now I gotta come up with X amount of dollars by March 31st in order to pay it and that. So you have less of a, it's spread out over the year as opposed to getting, one statement for the taxes, having to come up with that money today, okay? So that is a tax increase, okay? And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is a tax increase, but spread out over all wage earners in the town, it's not as big of a bite on property owners as, raising the mills, 10 mills, okay? The other problem that we have in town is rental properties. So if you look at the number of residents, buildings in the town, 51%, we've hit that 51% now, are not owned by the people that live in that thing. So they're rentals, okay? So it's an unfair burden to citizens that have said, I'm living in this town, I want to raise my family in this town, and I'm going to invest in buying a piece of property in this town. So fair taxation, which I'll talk about, which I kind of did, it moves that burden away from those people that want to invest and live in this town, not they live in the town, but actually own a property that have invested that money into it. I think it's unfair that those people are put with the higher burden of the city, the taxes. So again, fair property taxes are not based on the homeowner's ability to pay. In many cases, the middle and lower earners pay a far more higher percentage of their take-in money than what somebody with a higher income is. So if you're making $35,000 a year and your taxes are on average $700-800, that's a higher percentage as if someone's making $50 and paying the same amount in taxes. So the earned income raising will balance that out, spread it out a little bit further. So again, that's the $50 per 10,000 earned, and that's based on the median income of $35,368, resulting in a tax increase of $176.84. Okay. Okay. So what Home Rule Charter cannot do is go against the United States Constitution, the Constitution of Pennsylvania, labor laws, the unions. It's not a union breaking tool or anything like that. Environmental laws, we still have to follow stormwater management, which again is costing us money because we're by the river, water comes into our town. Once it comes into our town, we're responsible for taking care of it, okay? And the state says, well, you have to take care of it. Municipal planning and code, which would mean your zoning and stuff like that, is not going to be wiped out and thrown away. Crimes code has to be the same. Vehicle code, and most importantly, the Sunshine Law, which means the transparency, citizens can still come to meetings, and they have to follow the same guidelines as set out by the Sunshine Law Act. And restrictions, boundary changes, we can't decide Home Rule Charter today and convince New Brighton to come into our charter and now absorb this new Beaver, or whatever you want to call it, town. Can't do that. Subjects of taxation. We cannot create new taxes. For instance, we have taxes in place, so we can't come up with a new tax that whatever on pop. Pop being sold in Beaver Falls now has $1 per bottle. Can't do that. So it's whatever taxes we have, we can expand those, reduce, but we can't expand the taxes out there. Eminent domain, it doesn't allow the new Home Rule Charter to come take your property without going through the whole steps of that. We have no jurisdiction over public schools. Elections are all the same. Non-resident taxation means if you work in the city of Beaver Falls and live somewhere else, I can't, or the city can't put a wage tax on them to profit the city of Beaver Falls. That money goes to their community. And regulation of businesses is, the same thing. There's no, it's basically the same. What the rules are is the same as what it is. Disadvantages to home rule charter, okay? Not much oversight from the state, okay? That's one of the disadvantages as you do research that the state says, that, that's the disadvantage because they're not involved in setting the laws which they feel that Beaver Falls should follow. Charters can become cumbersome, meaning very long, because now you're taking a document like this, reading through it with a red pen, blue pen, highlighting what you want, and then putting stuff in there that is not in, because it has to be put into the charter, okay? So it's critical that the charter is wrote correctly, okay? So our consultant says that, of those 100 municipalities, counties, cities, townships, boroughs that are out there, there are good charters and there are bad charters, okay? So the charter is the critical thing if we get to that point. To change the charter has to go in front of the voters again. So if the citizens, we get a group of citizens, the same, a number that wants to petition to change the charter, you pass your petition around, you get it, and go to the Board of Elections to put the question on the ballot. So one of the problems that you hear is the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. So if somebody has a big faction in the town, they can get behind them and put it on the ballot, then it can change. But it's only changed by ballot. Right now, third-class city code, the only way you can get it changed is go to your representative, state representative, or state senator, ask them to go forward in the House and change it that way, which the chances of that happening are pretty slim to none. But again, it allows the citizens to look over this charter periodically and say, okay, this is not working, so we need this changed. So again, it gives citizen input during the whole time. The problem that the charters, unless it's addressed in the charter, is there's no real cap on property tax, which I don't like, but that's something that the commission and the citizens need to find. So in some of the charters, they have a cap of a certain percent. It can only raise a certain percent in so many years, which, that helps there. My concern with putting something like that in, as you all know, the Beaver County is reassessing all the properties. In my opinion, again, my opinion, I don't think Beaver Falls is going to fare well with reassessment. I think our $77 million assessment is actually going to drop. So if you drop property taxes way down, now you have this deficit here. So like I said, this is not an easy, it's not an easy fix. It's not just like one straight line that you can look at. There's all kinds of avenues and everything that's coming into this that has to be taken into consideration. Non-property owners. Non-property owners that live in the city, that rent in the city, that are wage earners, high or low, doesn't matter, may not want to see their taxes going up on their earned income. So that's a disadvantage. We're at 51% of rentals in Beaver Falls, so there is a majority of the people in Beaver Falls that rent here, that earn wages, that may not want this passed. And municipalities are not required to cooperate with other local governments unless it's in the charter. Some cities, townships have put in their charter that no clause like that. So if you need mutual aid, like our fire department, we have mutual aid with several of the surrounding communities. If it's not put into the charter, it prohibits you from doing that. So again, you see the importance of getting this charter to very precise. Steps to home rule charter, okay? So if we look at the little orange box there, that's the initial step. Beaver Falls Council has passed the ordinance. Again, citizens could have started that step. It's going to be placed on the April 28th ballot the question that I went over about studying home rule charter. If the citizens vote no, it's done. 5 years until it can ever be brought up again. Next step. On that ballot, there's going to be hopefully 20 names. But of those 20 names, you're going to pick 7 people to possibly serve on this commission. If the voters vote yes to the initiative, yes to those 7 people, then we move to the study. But if it's not passed, it's no, 5-year wait. 7 people study, and their recommendation, which I have a couple slides here, they have so long, within 9 months, to make a recommendation to the citizens of Beaver Falls and City Council what their determination is. 1, stay with third-class city code. 2, move forward with expanding the possibility of going with home rule charter, okay? So if the commission says no to this, it's no, 5-year wait. Let's say the commission decides yes to that. During the next, they have up to another 9 months to start a draft of the home rule charter. So during that whole process, there's going to be experts, from the state that can be called in, and the state already has, you can go on their website, and I'll give you the web address, but this whole packet here is what the state has put out about home rule charter, okay? So during that time, experts are called in, citizens come in, and during the whole process, these are public meetings, the citizens will come in and give their input to it. The commission will take that and then draft a charter. So it's not something that's overnight. It's not a cookie cutter thing that the state hands us and says, here, sign down at the bottom, this is your new home rule charter. It's going to be a long process for the whole thing. If it gets passed. People ask what cost is involved in it. So talking to the state, the initial cost is probably around $5,000. But since we are already into the early intervention grant program, we have phase 2, phase 3 coming up. They assured us that they can get us the grant for that. And that's mostly attorney fees to go through the home rule charter to make sure that there's no conflict in United States Constitution, Pennsylvania State Constitution, any of those things that I put out there. So that's the main expense, okay? So once we get to the point where the home rule charter is drafted, is presented to the citizens prior to the voting. So you have an option to read over that, look over that, and then make the decision. Then in the primary election, you're going to go to the ballot and make an informed decision, yes home rule charter, no home rule charter. If you vote no, 5 years we got to wait. Home rule charter, yes, home rule charter is adopted. Okay, so like I said, there's a whole 18-month process here, for this. Another question I heard is why it's going to be on the primary, because initiatives are mostly in the fall, because the commission that is being studied is non-partisan, meaning that a Democrat or Republican can run. They run no political party. So if anybody gets a petition, there should be no political party on there. This is one of the only times, except in like judicial running elections, that Republicans and Democrats can sign the same petition or nominating papers. Okay, so that's how it's allowed in the primary elections. Okay, questions submitted, which I went already over. And then this, like I said, this is the 7 people. So our initial response is find 7 people, at least 7, that their names will be placed on the ballot. Okay, so resident of Beaver Falls, you have to circulate a nominating petition obtaining 50 signatures. Okay, and the way the 50 signatures come back, and like I said, I have the research, so I like to tell you a little bit about this. So the research says 2% of the last gubernatorial election, which is the 2,500, 2% of that is 48, so we just rounded it up just to make sure. So you have 50. The Board of Elections, the initial packet that they sent us said it was 200, because the last time home rule charter was looked at in the county, it was a county-wide, so they need 200. So we got that resolved, so it's only 50. If you run for council, mayor, Beaver Falls, you have to have at least 100 signatures. So it's relatively simple to get that. You have to be 18 years of age, you know, the election. You're going to study the current form of government and compare, you know, what's good, what's bad, make that decision, and then within 9 months of after being elected, you have to report back to the citizens your initial decision, meaning yes, move forward with home rule charter, no, stay with third-class city code. Duties, responsibilities, again, it's pretty much the same. What I went over, it helps, like I said, the commission's gonna study if home rule charter would actually benefit the city, what cost savings are involved. All right, so that's that. So, nice. I don't know what that went through. But just to give you some numbers, when we talk about cost savings, like, so the fire department, I guess several years back, the city approached them about part-time help. Okay, so I asked Chief Stowe to give me some numbers. 2018, he had 2 part-timers that helped fill in with vacation days, sick days, and call-offs. Okay, so those 2, you know, they got paid, but it saved the fire department and the city and the taxpayers $44,000 a year, which, you know, you're looking at $8 million, 44, but I'm telling you, this budget, when this budget was started on back in the middle of summer, okay, we were looking at a $5 million deficit, okay? So when you start cutting every little penny that you can, and $44,000 makes the difference between going over budget and under budget, okay? So 2019, we were down to 1 part-timer, which saved the city $36,000. So Mark Stowe, Chief Stowe, wishes to possibly put 3 part-timers on, which would be a savings of $67,000, okay? So that's just one department, you know? So if you start adding up the other departments, a reduction, you know, there's many options that this charter can go in, and that's where our cost savings, again, we'd have the tax increase, but we have to be financially responsible for every dollar that you guys are giving the city, okay? So I'm not gonna sit there and say, okay, now we have this extra money coming in, let's go out and spend it all. That's not my plan at all, okay? You know, there's debt reduction that we have to do, there's a lot of things, but we've got to cost save. But with taking out $500,000 out of the budget, you know, to balance that budget, you know, you ask these department people, they were, you know, we're cutting 13 to 25% off their budget. You know, salaries, payroll, stuff like that, you really can't touch, but we're down to the bare minimums. The fire department is down 1 or 2 guys. Police department is down now 3. Treasurer's office is down 1. Street department is down at least 1, okay? So we're cutting, but our you know, the citizens want and should get the amount of service that they're paying their taxes for. But we have to cut this budget because, again, those revenue numbers is just not there anymore. I don't know why it's not working.
Battery went dead.
So that's where we're at on that. So I'd like to open it up to questions. I mean, like I said, again, I am not an expert on it. I will try to help. At least you would have a basic understanding of what home rule charter is, some of the benefits, some of the disadvantages of home rule charter, and when you leave and go vote on April 28th, you can make an informed decision without just saying, I don't know what this is, and just hit no, okay? Yes, sir.
Questions?
Yes.
If on April 28th, the commission doesn't survive the vote, what is the financial plan for the next 5 years?
Financial plan for the city of Beaver Falls?
Yes.
2 years we can get by. After in 3 years, if you look at those numbers, we will more than likely be Act 47. Yes, sir.
What does Act 47 do if the state takes over under Act 47, what does that mean financially?
Well, what it means financially is that all the good work that before me, that council has laid out to start the recovery for Beaver Falls, in my opinion, is gonna go down. No one's gonna wanna come to a quote bankrupt town. If you look at some of the other towns that are under Act 47, they cut, everything's part-time. Your taxes, they have emergency taxing, so the taxes increased, your services are gonna drop big time.
Well, what sort of taxes would increase?
Well, they have the advantage of doing property tax. They have the advantage of hitting with that additional 1.5% that I talked about in wage earnings. Keep going.
Are there individuals, and I don't know how to put this, writing a report can extend to many pages. It requires a certain skill to write a report.
Yes, sir.
It requires a certain skill to investigate in an unbiased manner.
True.
Is there that capability within this community? Are there individuals who can write a report that has references in it, footnotes, documentation, exhibits, that sort of thing? That is necessary in order to determine whether the report itself is a document without prejudice.
I understand that. I believe that there are very good citizens of Beaver Falls that are quite capable of getting this task. There's going to be experts provided by the state during this whole process.
We can also look through other charters that other people have done and not.
Yeah, we're not, like I said, there's only 18 third-class cities left in Beaver Falls that are under the old form of charter in Pennsylvania.
But we're not discussing 18 other cities, we're discussing this city. What happens in 18 other cities is immaterial as far as I'm concerned. They have a different circumstance, a different situation financially, I'm sure, than Beaver Falls is facing now. So,
Well, there's other third-class cities that I took their budgets that have about the same population, have the same income, have about the same size, and you compare those budgets to see why Beaver Falls may be higher on this one, why theirs are lower. So this is not, like I said, it's not exact science, but the numbers and figures are out there, the guidance from the state. The state does not want to take over another city. They don't have the manpower. They want us to look at the possibility of this.
you're basing your argument here, and I mean argument in the sense that it is a presentation of factual material, and it's a philosophical argument. On the basis of certain financial considerations with regard to the city, what the city would like to spend in the future, and yet I find a lack of presentation of what those financial considerations, pardon me, what those financial considerations are in the future, and whether or not some of those financial considerations can be addressed otherwise.
Well, if you have a flat revenue, you have increasing costs, how can you pay your bills if you have these increasing costs that we don't have a control over,
What sort of costs don't you have control over? Are there any services that the city could, not provide itself, but farm out to someone else to provide? Could the state police run safety in Beaver Falls? Would a commission?
no, third-class city code says.
You're actually sort of getting to our point, and that is that under the current third-class city code regulations, we wouldn't have that flexibility. If we write our own charter, that is something that we could look at. I'm not saying that that's what we would decide to do, but I'm saying that we would have the option of looking at something like that. We're constrained by the third-class city code, so to have a paid police department, a paid fire department. You go over the bridge to New Brighton, they're a borough, all volunteer fire department. So those are just differences in the code that we're constrained by. So you're making a good point for us to try to gain some more flexibility.
Is the waters department part of the city?
No, it's
or
not.
separate?
No, it's
Completely
not.
separate.
I wish it was part of the city.
The street department is part of the
Yes,
city.
yes.
What else is part of the city?
Well, your fire, police, wastewater treatment, the operations of the city out of this building.
And where
What
is-
am I missing? That's
where
it.
is-
Treasurer's
Where
office.
is
Right.
where is the increase in financial cost coming from?
Increased cost, you know, there's a percentage that goes up every year.
Why
Employees-
is that? What is there that causes an increase in the cost of the
It's
city doing business?
I would say one of the things would be the increase in salaries, which we think we've done that judiciously. We are dealing with unions. We've been adopting cost of living increases, so those are minimal. But over a 10-year period, if somebody's wages are going up 2% over 10 years, that's a 20% increase. There isn't that kind of income being generated. The income coming into the city, as Kevin's chart showed, is flat. So even when you're trying to be careful, trying not to spend a lot, it still goes up.
Last year, we raised taxes for the first time in 12 or 13 years because we didn't want to burden the taxpayers and the property owners in Beaver Falls with more taxes. But as you see, as our expenses go up, like Duquesne Lake, somebody's bills pay our bills. And, you know, finally, we had to come back to, you know, the general population and go, we need you, you know? We've run out of ideas. You know, things like you had state police, anybody that has the state police has a long wait. And there's just been a thing, you know, on TV, I saw the other night on the news that there are so many communities and municipalities that want to use the state police, that the state police is going to start charging big bucks to do that because it's tapping their resources. So, you know, there's some of the things that you think you can do and, you know, would be nice to do, but when you're talking about probably a 2 to 3 minute response time by our police, if you have a problem, to a 2 or 3 hour response if it's state police, yeah, that wouldn't be good for us. So there are a lot of things that, you know, you'd like to do, but, you know, everything's a double-edged sword. You know, you look at this and then look at the other side. So.
Kevin?
Good questions.
Yep, very good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let's let some other people ask some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Kevin, I think that one of the important things with this plan is that easing the tax burden on the property owners. Beaver Falls has a lot of retired fixed income people. And, you know my mom lives somewhere else and she's basically being taxed out of her home. And you hear that a lot about elderly people on fixed incomes, that their property taxes keep going up and up.
Sure.
And of course, their income doesn't go up, you know. So I think that
really important for a lot of the property owners in town.
Yes, I agree. Lindsay?
Do you think that with Beaver Falls having so many retirees, do you anticipate enough money coming in by just increasing the wage tax, the earned income tax for the workers? Is there enough?
Yes,
You think
if
there'd
we,
be
if we
enough
look at our
coming in?
current amount that we collect, the 0.5% that comes out of your paycheck generates $580,000. So another half would double that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's where the increase would be, and that, again, you have to be, financially responsible for that. Just because you take in another $580,000 doesn't mean that you spend $580,000.
Right.
And we're still going off the budget, and, we have debt reduction that we've gotta do, so that's the only way that I can see that we can pay off everything. Okay.
I think a good point to be made here is change is coming, one way or another. When I saw your 5-year projections, that is just scary to think of what could happen.
Terrifying.
And if the change comes through Act 47, these changes are gonna be forced on you. You're not gonna have any choice. Everything's gonna go part-time. Everything's gonna be cut because they're not gonna let you spend more money than you have. So I came in not having any opinion for or against this, but all this is doing right now is really just taking a look at the possibility of this. And this seems, on the surface, what I've seen so far, this looks like a good option for the city to take control of their future. Because unfortunately, changes are coming one way or another.
Well, when you can't increase your income and you have a constant increase, in your expenditures, you have a big problem. There's nothing that you can do. But look at the hard figures, which, Kevin has put out there, and that everybody can see that in a couple years, this is the most important thing we're gonna do. What we're doing right now is to make a decision to do this or not, but hold in mind that if we don't do it, you're 2 years away from Act 47. All our services will be part-time, all the wages will be cut in the city, all your services will be cut, and your property value is gonna plummet, and nobody's gonna come and bring business to town. And we've been bringing in and lining up businesses for the last 8 years, and we have people that wanna come, but we have to survive. Beaver Falls was a great city until they went broke, right? So we're trying to make sure that we don't go broke, and it's up to all of us to make sure that happens. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kev.
Yes, sir.
There's a woman in the far from me brought up an interesting point. She said, why not shift the tax burden from one group to another? Neither group experiencing any benefit from their tax increase or tax decrease. Seems to me that if you raise taxes, the people who are paying the taxes will expect, or should expect, to receive some benefit from those increase in taxes. I don't know how to justify raising the tax on one group and reducing it on another. I don't see it being morally or ethically possible.
So, but right now, the tax burden is on property owners.
Well, the property owners are paying a tax. They are paying so much tax, so many dollars, so much percentage of the valuation of their property. The idea is to lower the valuation of their property, or to reduce their tax in their dollar amount tax in some amount,
In the millage.
and to pick that tax up, pick up what was lost from the property tax by charging those who are working.
Those
Right.
who have the ability to pay the tax better than,
Well, if there is maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned, My thinking is that if somebody owns a piece of property, or buys a piece of property, they realize that they're gonna have a tax on it. And they have to have something put aside to pay that tax. It's like buying a car, you know, you buy a car and you pay an initial amount, but you have to have money aside to service that car, to see that it keeps running over the course of time that you own it. It's your personal responsibility to do that. And you can't go down the street and say, hey, you in the fourth house down there, you're responsible for paying the service on my car.
Okay, so again, if you have residents that live in the city, those residents get the same services that anybody. It doesn't matter if I'm making $15,000 a year or if I'm making $150,000 a year. Those services are all the same. They're available to any citizen in that thing. But if the people that have been in their houses for 40 years, all of a sudden their taxes going up more and more and more, and it does not meet the Social Security inflation or pension or anything like that, that's a higher tax burden on them than what it is somebody else that's living in the same type of house that's making more money.
I understand that.
Well, and I don't think it's fair that somebody that's been in their house for 40 years, all of a sudden that because of taxes going up, they can no longer afford that house.
Well, I don't like the characterization of the word fair. That's a rather judgmental term, if you don't mind my saying so. What I'm suggesting is, with regard to moving taxes from one group to another, I don't see the ethical justification for it. I don't see the moral justification for it, actually. I mean, you can say, well, this individual is poor and this individual is rich, so we're going to tax the rich guy and let the poor guy go. That doesn't make much sense to me. There's an individual responsibility on the part of anyone who's a citizen in any community.
But federal
See,
tax.
and that's what I think. I bring that point up because that's what I think this commission, well, that's what I think is a difficulty with having commissions study home rule.
Sir, we can surmise and imagine what might happen, you know, I mean, you can come up with a bunch of valid points, but until we have a commission, until we have those people that are willing to be on the commission and move forward, we can play hypotheticals all day long.
Well, the people on the commission may, as I said earlier, conducting research that is free of a particular point of view is very difficult. It requires having to have done it in the past and consistently done it.
You have a pretty fair point of view. I mean,
So, but
I've
back
heard a lot
to
of
the
it.
fair taxation, you say it's not fair to tax this person compared to that. The federal government does it. If I make X amount of dollars, I'm put into another tax bracket. So I pay more tax than what somebody that earns $10,000 less than me.
But it's all on an earned income basis. It's
so
all
it's-
on the same tax basis. The federal government doesn't come by and say, look, there's one tax rate for earned income and there's another tax rate for the value of your property. Right?
I understand that, but you said
You're
that-
taxing two different things rather than one. in
You
your
said something
comparison.
about the devaluation of property, and as it goes down, the taxes will go down, correct? Did I hear that right? So if they come in and reassess, and they reassess your property down, you're gonna pay less taxes instantly because they did that. Now you're paying less taxes. We've already initiated the program where we are taxing the wage earners. How do we make up for the deficit that we have when the county drops your property value?
Well,
I mean, see, that's what I mean. It's a balancing act. You can come up with a million different things that it could be, but until we put together the commission, if that's what's gonna happen, and actually sit down with a bunch of people that have an opinion, which, you know, yours would be obviously, you know, more than welcome, but, you know, right now, we need people to know what's going on. What could happen, and, you know, what will happen aren't necessarily the same thing. So, yeah, I think that the most important thing is that we know that we have to do something, and trust me when we tell you that we have exhausted every idea that you've come up with. I mean, signs on buses, signs on park benches, I mean, you name it, increased services. Another thing that people in Beaver Falls probably are not aware of, if they are, that's great, but probably 40 to 50% of Beaver Falls is off the tax rolls. The school district, the college, the churches, I mean, they don't pay any taxes, and they use every service that you use. They use the water, they use the purification plant, they use the fire department, they use the police department, and they don't pay anything. Housing authority, they don't pay anything either. So, you know, when you're looking at that, remember that only 50% of the households here are on the tax rolls. So you're trying to make an $8 million budget with $4 million of money, essentially. I mean, half of our people here are not paying taxes.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You said that we have enough money to run for the next 2 years without the government coming in
Pretty much.
under Act 47. This process, if I understand it, is gonna take at least 18 months, maybe a
Correct.
little more, right?
Correct.
What happens if we run out of money? I mean, you're estimating the 2 years, that's pretty close.
It is. and
You
I-
know, what happens if we run out of money before that process is complete? Is the state gonna
So-
come in and do that anyway?
Yeah, under Act 47 intervention from the states, one of their exit plans are the home rule charter. So Newcastle was under Act 47. The state says, you know, if you move with this home rule charter to get out of Act 47, that's one of the options.
So they'll give us a little leeway if,
I can't answer that for sure. What I'm saying is if in 2 years we go under Act 47 before home rule charter, and like I said, if home rule charter gets put no at any of those times, it's a 5-year wait. You have to wait 5 years before that goes back on the ballot, you know, on the initiation. That I can't answer, to be honest.
okay, because like I said, it just seems like
Yeah, I mean-
that's awful
Because
close
the numbers
in
back
time for it
Trying to keep
to,
up with you, Kevin.
Yeah, it is, and like I said, it's not that people before me wasn't financially looking and trying to, there was some problems that were addressed, okay? But it's a buildup of stuff over the year. So, but like I said, to get a balanced budget, you know, and actually have a savings, money in the bank, in the black for 1 year, which may not be, you know, anywhere depending on the financials, because again, our city treasurer passed away, so our accountant is loading those up to figure out the number, okay? But, you know, the intervention group estimated approximately 97,000 that we would have positive. I'm gonna be more conservative, 36. 36 doesn't seem like much, but it's better than being in the red, which in the past, you just keep bringing the debt up.
right.
So the numbers are just too close. They're just too close for my comfort, when it should be too close for everybody else's comfort.
No, I agree with that.
So, yes, ma'am.
It doesn't necessarily have to take 18 months, if what I understand is
No,
correct. If they
it's,
could get this done in a year,
but you still, it has to be put on the general election. So the 9 months puts us, if it gets passed in, I think April, that means January 28th, the commission has to report by law back to the citizens and council what their recommendation is. I mean, during that time, if they have already made their, you know, it's, you know, they have to report by that time. I mean, if the commission forms and within 3 months they've made that determination, then they can start working on the draft of the home rule charter. Then it has to be presented, then it'll be put on the ballot in a November election. You know, so it can take up to 18 months.
So if April 28th,
Yes.
it's yes, and how soon can,
The very next day, everybody gets sworn in, letters, you know, for the city are given, the commission is formed, immediately they can get started to work.
does the city have that commission in place, or
No,
those names?
No, the petitions that are being circulated, and again, any resident over the age of 18 can be placed on the ballot. You know, so, and that's what it said, is we're looking at, and that was one of the important things that the city, you know, when we started, you know, talking about this, moving forward on this, okay, the commission, you know, Doug Carson wishes to be on the commission. I wanted to be on the commission too, but I don't want it to look like the city is influencing this in any way. So we're limiting it to city members. We want a you know, a bunch of people from different aspects of the whole city to come together, because that's the only way that we're going to succeed in this city, is a group effort from the citizens. Not, again, again, it's the state telling us third-class city code. If we would, you know, put all council members mostly on this thing, it's again city council telling you guys, we don't want that. We want the citizens to come to us and say, we've been involved in this home rule charter the whole way, and I believe that's the only way that we can get the support for that. Yes, sir.
Is the school system part of the financial affairs of the city?
No, we have nothing to do with public schools.
What if you don't have 7 people?
Then it's a no.
Okay.
That's what I said. The state has
It
laid
only
this
goes
out.
on there if you
Yeah.
have 7.
The state has laid this out as a possibility. It's like running a 100-yard dash, as I say, okay? So the state says, yeah, here's your finish line, but as you're running it, we're gonna put a landmine in here, we're gonna put a wall up, we're gonna do this, because we're not gonna make it easy. And like I said, at any step of the thing, it says, no, we're done,
Right.
okay? And another analogy that I'll use is for sports fans. You look at third-class city code as a baseball game. So you're paying, in the 50s, we were on a baseball field, playing baseball with a baseball set of rules. Today, we're asked from the state to play baseball on something like an ice arena, still with those baseball rules, and you're not gonna win. That's where we're at. Yes, ma'am.
Kevin, she asked, what if you don't get 7 people? How many people in this room just tonight are already petitioning to be on? If they would please raise their hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Seven.
6. Looks like I got 7.
That's fantastic,
Oh.
great,
7, 8.
that's good.
So I don't think there'll be a
And
problem.
there can be 20 of you.
Yeah.
You know, and whoever's the top 7 vote getters are the 7. you know?
Yeah, like I said,
If you're interested,
I mean, I would love to see 20 names on there, which, you know, 20 names shows that there's enough interest in this, that people see the seriousness of this. And like I said, again, in my opinion, this is going to be the most important, critical decision that the voters in all of history of Beaver Falls are gonna have the option to make. Yes, sir.
I brought my petition with me tonight, hoping to get some extra signatures. But I wanted to add or stress that I've lived downtown all my life. I've worked in this town for most of my employment life. And I'm also a homeowner and a landlord, so I need to be in this game. So I think there's some people that are getting together that are creating their own agenda that want to get on this committee, and so I think it's better to have a very diverse representation of all the citizens in town here, rather than special interest groups.
Like I
Sure,
said,
and
if
it
there's
has to
anybody.
be you have to be elected by your
Yeah.
peers.
I mean, it's gonna be the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, I mean, it's-
And again,
you
anybody
try for a
here that's
special interest
interested,
group,
I
but,
do
yeah.
have the nominating papers, I do have the form, I will help you, give you the information that you can go out. Again, we're opening us up to any citizen over the age of 18, so.
So as a resident then, can I only sign one petition?
No,
or
you
can
can
I
sign up to as many.
I can sign up to.
Hold on, so there'd be 7.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
This might be completely impossible, but we keep talking about being bound by third-class city code. Who says we have to be a city?
Well, we don't have to be a city, okay? So the other option that we have is going with a borough, because we've already fell under the 10,000 threshold. But borough code is still as cumbersome not as cumbersome as third-class city code. And like I said, again, our early intervention consultants are not recommending borough. They are recommending to look into home rule charter.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, if I understand correctly, whether you're third-class city code or borough code, that's the code the state sets
The
in
state-
every
Yes,
city.
absolutely.
Every
Where
city.
home rule charter is customized to your city.
To your town.
So
And
that
the
makes-
citizens, again, during the whole process, has a voice. They can change the charter by putting it on the petition, like again, or on the ballot. Third-class city code, municipal code, the only avenue that you have is to go to your representative, state, and senator, and hopefully that they have enough power in the PA Senate to get it changed.
You would be able to write essentially the policy of the city. Who has the horsepower, in an election? Is the mayor the mayor? Does he have a vote? Is he a tiebreaker? What about the different council people? What do they do? Are there different duplicate services that we perform that we might be able to do away with? And that's what you guys do. You guys write the way you want the city to operate. You're the ones that tell us. It's not like the government going, yeah, you're gonna do this. It's where you guys go, this is the way we want our city to operate. So it's very important that the people that are gonna write this are diligent.
Does the state review any of that, or they say out of it completely?
The state, like I said, the grant, for the attorney to review it, they estimated that the cost is $5,000.
Right.
The state has already said within our next step of early intervention, phase 2, we can get that grant to pay for that. So the actual costs involved of the $5,000 that it, is going to cost, the other is what we call, be incidental, meaning, your copy, stuff like that. Commission does not get paid. There's gonna be no overnight trips to another third-class city over across Pennsylvania, and stuff like that. I mean, so the costs are very minimal, except that legal fee to make sure that, again, that it doesn't, violate any of the constitutions, any state or federal law or whatever there. Yes.
And you did say that there's a consultant that's
This, and
the state provides
the state will
funding for a
provide
consultant to help you as
consultants,
you walk through to make sure you're.
Well, yeah, the state, like I said, the state has an invested interest in the city, because if the city goes Act 47, that means the state has to come in and they have to manage it. So they are trying to give us every avenue and tool, if you want to say, to avoid Act 47.
In creating a charter, would the committee be able to suggest new taxes?
No, you can't create new taxes. You can only expand on the taxes that you already have in place.
But since a charter is creating the form of government, why wouldn't that be the right time to?
That's one of the stipulations that the state says. If you go with home rule charter, you cannot create new taxes. You can only expand on the current taxes that you have. Yes, sir.
What taxes does the city currently have? In what way can the city currently tax?
We can tax property tax. We can tax earned income tax. We can tax a mercantile tax, a business privilege tax.
Okay, wrap it up.
All right.
Anybody else? If there's not, think about it. It's very important. If you need a petition, we have some up here.
And the
Stay
next-
dry, stay safe, and thanks for coming
Yeah,
out.
Would you join me in thanking Kevin, Councilman?
time that I'm going to have this presentation, which will be pretty much the same except questions, would be our new Eye on the City, which is going to be here Monday, February 22nd, or is it 23rd?
24th.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
24th, 7 p.m. here.
Last Monday.
And again, we're gonna have, I'm planning on at least 2 more meetings, you know, in the next month, and at least 1 more in April.
So they can watch.